Magandang umaga, Malacañang Press Corps, and welcome sa ating press briefing ngayon, araw, August 31st. We are also joined by the Department of Foreign Affairs Press Corps via Zoom. Next week, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is set to attend the 43rd Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit, or the ASEAN Summit, in Jakarta, Indonesia, from September 5 to the 7th, with the theme, ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. Para bigyan tayo ng detalye sa gaganaping ASEAN Summit, kasama natin ngayon from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Office of ASEAN Affairs, Assistant Secretary Daniel R. Espiritu. Good morning, ASEC Espiritu.
Hi, good morning, Daphne.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. Let me read to you, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, let me say that it's again a pleasure to be with you after several summits na ng ASEAN during my time and the President's term. Let me read to you the statement on the President's participation in the 43rd ASEAN Summit and related summits. Okay, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., along with the leaders of the other ASEAN member states and several dialogue partners, will participate in the 43rd ASEAN Summits and related summits in Jakarta, Indonesia. This will be from 5 to 7 September 2020.
Good morning po sa lahat. Press briefing po tayo, mga kapatid. We have a new, not new, sorry. We have a announcement sa paglabas ni Pangulong Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. this coming September. Ito po ay ibabanggitin at malalaman natin ngayon dito sa press briefing na ito yung mga paghahanda ni Pangulong Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos sa kanyang pag-alis sa bansa by next week. Panoorin po natin ang video na ito, tapusin natin. Ayan, huwag niyo pong kalimutan na i-like ang ating live stream. Maraming salamat po. And good morning once again.
Build consensus on matters of mutual interest and provide policy direction for the ASEAN community in the years to come. The 43rd ASEAN Summit and related summits will include meetings with several dialogue partners of ASEAN, as well as summits of ASEAN-led mechanisms, such as the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit and the East Asia Summit. The President will also attend the opening of the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum upon the invitation of Indonesia. This event will serve as a platform for ASEAN to discuss infrastructure projects and programs to implement the priority areas of cooperation under the ASEAN Outlook in the Indo-Pacific, with external partners and other participants. Overall, the President is expected to attend 13 leaders-level engagements, 12 of them summit sessions with other leaders. These are, let me start with September 5, Tuesday, the 43rd ASEAN Summit plenary session, the opening ceremony of the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum, and then the 43rd ASEAN Summit retreat session. On September 6, Wednesday, the President will attend the 26th ASEAN-China Summit, the 24th ASEAN Republic of Korea Summit, the 26th ASEAN-Japan Summit, the 26th ASEAN Plus 3 Summit, and then the ASEAN-US Summit and the ASEAN-Canada Summit. On the last day, September 7, 2023, first day, the President will attend the 20th ASEAN-India Summit, the 18th East Asia Summit, the 3rd ASEAN-Australia Summit, and the 13th ASEAN-UN Summit. In these engagements, the President will continue to uphold and promote Philippine interests in ASEAN. He will highlight our advocacies in strengthening food and energy security, harnessing the potential of the digital and creative industries and MSMEs, and addressing the impacts of climate change, among others. The President will also continue to emphasize our efforts to protect migrant workers in crisis situation, as well as combating trafficking in persons, especially with the use or abuse of technology. Other priority areas of cooperation with dialogue partners will also be discussed. Furthermore, the President will continue to promote a rules-based international order, including the 92 UNCLOS, especially in the South China Sea. The Philippines will continue to uphold and exercise freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea in accordance with international law. The leaders are expected to discuss various international issues that impact the region and beyond. These include the situation in Myanmar, the conflict in Ukraine, as well as geopolitical rivalries in the Indo-Pacific region. To date, over 90 outcome documents are being targeted to be issued, adopted, or noted during the summits. The key outcome documents would include the following: ASEAN Leaders' Declaration on Strengthening Food Security and Nutrition in Response to Crisis, and also individual joint statements on strengthening cooperation on food security between ASEAN, Australia, Canada, and India. ASEAN Guidelines on the Protection of Migrant Workers and Family Members in Crisis Situation. ASEAN Leaders' Statement on the Development of the Digital Economy Framework Agreement, and the ASEAN Joint Statement on Climate Change to the 28th session of the Conference of the Parties for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, among others. The 43rd Summit and related summits will conclude on 7 September 2023 with a handover ceremony of the ASEAN chairmanship from Indonesia, the Lao People's Democratic Republic. That ends the briefing. I'm now open to your questions. Yeah, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Jinky Baticados, IBC 13.
Hi, sir. Good morning po.
Hi, good morning.
Sir, how is the summit different from the 42nd in terms of agenda and purpose?
Okay. Primarily, most of the agenda items are the same, but in the 42nd summit last May, it was primarily a series of activities setting the frameworks of this agenda. Now, in the 43rd summit, we will not, the activities of the various participants will now focus on the follow-on activities to realize the deliverables of the 42nd summit. So parang the completion or the next steps for the 42nd summit. But of course, just like in most ASEAN summits, the story does not end there. Yeah, usually these are long-term activities that continue on and on, depending on the issues concerned. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sir, ang 43rd summit is expected to produce no more agreements. May we know kung saan po nakafocus yung agreements na gagawin on this particular summit po?
Well, actually, as I said a moment ago, there are 50 deliverables, but yung pinaka-importante, let me just say na siguro sa atin, let's focus on what are the ones that are most important to the Philippines. So we'll be focusing on food security and energy security, of course, post-pandemic transformation, and then the digital economy and the e-commerce and the creative industries, MSMEs, and of course, protection of migrant workers. So if you will remember, during the 42nd summit, there was this leaders' declaration on the protection of migrant workers and their families in times of crisis. This time, under the 43rd summit, we are now discussing the guidelines for the implementation of that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Maricel Halili, TV5.
Hi, sir. Magandang umaga
Hi,
po.
hello, good morning.
Sir, is the President, or meron po bang scheduled bilateral meeting with the President and other leaders of ASEAN and other leaders who will be present during the summit?
Yeah, there are actually several. Not all of these are confirmed. Ang iba niluluto pa, no? But there will be one with Prime Minister of Cambodia, Hun Manet, bilateral meeting with the Republic of Korea President Yoon Suk-yeol, and a bilateral meeting with Timor-Leste Prime Minister Kay Rala Sanana Gusmao. And there's another one with Vietnam Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh.
And what will be the focus of the discussion among the leaders?
Okay, with Vietnam, the focus will be on strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries, and of course, cooperation on rice and food security. With Sanana Gusmao of Timor-Leste, of course, the President will congratulate him on his assumption of office last July. But let's say at the same time, we will reassure Timor-Leste of our cooperation with their country in the years to come, especially in their preparations for final membership in ASEAN. Yeah. And then with Hun Manet, again, the President intends to congratulate the new Prime Minister on his assumption of office. And again, we will be discussing matters of mutual concern between our two countries. And then with President Yoon Suk-yeol of Korea, we'll be discussing new areas of cooperation in time for the 75th year anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations between the Philippines and Republic of Korea. At the same time, we'll be thanking also Korea for its support for the Philippines in terms of the assistance that they gave during the Typhoon Egay, around $300,000. And then also they intend to donate under the ASEAN +3 rice reserve arrangement a total of 750 metric tons of rice to the Philippines. 400 of that are already in the pipeline. Thank you.
Okay,
There are others, but I cannot confirm at this point yet the others because they're still being arranged.
Alan Francisco, PTV4.
Hi, ma'am. Hi, sir. Good morning. Sir, in layman's term, how can our kababayans benefit from this kind of summit which the President will be attending to?
Okay, in layman's term, we can say that in several ways, our kababayans will definitely benefit. Like what I said a moment ago, the focus, if you look at all of this, in general, the focus will be on our post-COVID recovery and transformation, especially in terms of the economy and food and energy security. During this summit, meron ding yung tinatawag na meetings concerning trade and investment. Of course, the President will be pitching for more trade and investment with ASEAN countries as well as external partners. And then at the same time, during the infrastructure forum na mention ko kanina, there will be 5 infrastructure projects of the Philippines that will be included in the promotion during that forum. And all of them, airport development projects in Zamboanga, Busuanga, Sanga-Sanga in Tawi-Tawi, also in Brooks Point, Palawan, and there's another one in all in all there are 5 of them. Yeah. So at the same time, we will also very much benefit from the arrangements for the protection of migrant workers and their families. Pinag-uusapan na since the last summit.
Okay. Celerina Monte of NHK.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, regarding the joint statement or joint communique that will be released during the summit, may we know if the Philippines would be insisting on because of the recent incidents in Ayungin, as well as the new map being released by China. So would that be discussed in the joint communique, or will the Philippines push for any statement regarding that matter?
The Philippines is definitely pushing for statements in that regard. But of course, I cannot give you yet the final text of that because it's still being negotiated.
But most probably, what could be the wordings possible?
I cannot say. There are 10 countries, and there's in other statements there are external partners involved, and it only takes one to object, and you lose consensus. So I cannot predict at this point.
So do you think you could get the support of the other ASEAN members?
Definitely there are external partners who support us, but I cannot say at this point if it will be at the level of consensus in the end.
So it's just not merely condemnation or what? Or
Well,
what
we're saying something in that regard. Yeah, not exactly with the word condemnation, but to that effect.
Okay.
what could be the diplomatic way of saying it?
Alam mo, yung language, pinag-uusapan pa eh. So I cannot predict at this point kung ano magiging outcome.
Okay.
Magbabago yan many times depending on the compromise and usapan doon.
Okay.
Thank
Ken Sasaki of Kyodo News.
Thank you.
Hi, hello.
Hello. I'm interested in the Philippine policy on Myanmar issue. How do you evaluate the initiative by Thailand to make a dialogue with the Myanmar regime? And also, the decision of ASEAN had been consensus-based. But virtually now the decision is made exclusive of the Myanmar. Do you think the principle should be changed for the decision making of ASEAN?
Well, as far as the Philippines and ASEAN is concerned, we're still hinging everything on the 5-point consensus. So all efforts in ASEAN are in accordance with the 5-point consensus. Now, in that regard, and also with regard to the actions of Thailand, the consensus at the last foreign ministers meeting is that all efforts in ASEAN will have to be coordinated and done in concert with the chair and the office of the special envoy of the chair. So that is our position on that. Now, we fully support all the efforts of the ASEAN chair, Indonesia right now, in increasing engagement with all stakeholders, all the parties in the Myanmar issue to come up with a constructive dialogue in this regard. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Alexis Romero, Philippine Star.
Good morning, ASEC.
Hi, good morning.
Do you expect significant developments during the summit with regard to discussions on a binding code of conduct for South China Sea claimants? Because as we all know, taon-taon na lang kasi itong ASEAN, and then laging binabanggit yung the need to fast-track the binding code of conduct. Nothing seems to be happening. So do you expect a significant development, at least during this summit, with regard to that?
I think during this summit, napaka-eksinong panahon, no? We just hosted the joint working group meeting on the DOC in the Philippines last week, August 22 to 24. And kasama dun sa mga pinag-usapan among what we call milestone issues, etong whether the COC should be legally binding or not. So, hindi pa tapos ang usapan dyan. Pag-uusapan pa yan. And most probably, we'll have to wait because hindi pa natin alam kung ano magiging actual na laman ng COC and whether it's good for all of us for it to be legally binding or not.
So realistically, what will be achieved in this summit in terms of that code of conduct?
Well, at most there will be a reporting on what happened during the last meeting in the Philippines on the of the joint working group on the COC, but nothing definitive yet in terms of yung sinasabi mong whether legally binding or non-legally binding and other issues. It's a very methodical process. So hindi natin dapat madaliin ito. Yeah.
What impediments do you see in the crafting of that code of conduct?
Well, marami na. Definitely, yung mga national interest natin, medyo nagkakaiba, no? But at this point, I cannot exactly say that to you kung ano to mga ito, no? So, since there are several countries involved here, and nandyan din yung ASEAN, we'll have to come up with a compromise on every step of the way. It's been happening for already a long time. So, I think it will take a little bit longer para matapos ito.
Okay, we have a question from Malu Bartolome of Business Mirror from the DFA Press Corps. ASEAN parliamentarians for human rights have condemned the expulsion of Timorese diplomat from Myanmar. What is the Philippines' position regarding this?
Well, I cannot exactly comment on that because that's a bilateral issue, no? It's a bilateral issue. It's being handled by another office. Well, suffice it to say that on matters of declaring people persona non grata or diplomats persona non grata, that's a sovereign prerogative of the state concerned. But as far as we are concerned in the 5-point consensus, the 5-point consensus calls for the engagement of all parties. So let me stop at that one. I think you already understood the.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eden Santos, Net 25.
Asek, good morning po. Siguro po alam nyo na yung regarding sa balita na yung 10-dash line po na mapa ng China. Ano po yung stand ng Pilipinas through DFA? Ano po yung mga pwede pa natin gawin? Baka dahil sa gusto nating idaan sa mapayapang negosasyon, ito pong issue na ito, baka hindi lang 10-dash line po yung abuti ng mapa ng China. Ano po, baka magising na lang tayo, pag-aari na pala nila yan or sakop na po ng China yung pinag-aagawang teritoryo po ng tubig na yon.
Eden, hindi ko din purview, no? But suffice it to say that we already protested against that. Definitely, we're not in favor of that. We reject that, and we continue to promote a peaceful settlement of disputes in that regard.
Thank you po.
Harley Valbuena.
Hi, good morning po. Sir, you mentioned that there will be meetings concerning trade and investment. So, will the President pitch the Maharlika Investment Fund sa ASEAN Summit po, and also with this meeting with the other leaders?
Okay, let me. There are business events being planned, but wala namang sinabing exactly Maharlika na pag-uusapan doon. No? In fact, the meetings being planned by the Philippines, kasi hindi to hiwalay yung sa ASEAN. There's this economic pillar of ASEAN handling in general terms trade and investment, FTAs, etc., etc. No? But we also have the president will also be attending events specifically to pitch trade and investment in Indonesia. One of them will be a meeting with the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, and another one with certain businesses who intend to expand their presence in the Philippines. And in fact, among the companies that who will be there would be the WIR Asia, who intends to expand one of its subsidiaries already existing in the Philippines to the tune of 1 billion pesos or $20 million in fresh infusion to expand innovations in metaverse and artificial intelligence applications. And another one would be Pacific Satellite Nusantara, who already signed a letter of intent in September 2022 with the Philippines, and will report to the President the progress of their project in the Philippines and the launching of a satellite in December 2023. And then they also plan to allocate 13.5 gigabytes per second of bandwidth for the Philippines. And then another company who will be present during one of these meetings would be the Daria Varia Laboratoria and Vaccindo Satwa Nusantara. They will soon provide the Philippines with avian influenza vaccines. So, ito pa lang yung nasa pipeline ngayon. May mga ginagawa pa.
Okay. I just have a question here from DFA Press Corps, Joseph Pedrajas. Is there a significant development in the recent South China Sea conduct talks in Manila? And how will this affect the upcoming position of the Philippines, particularly at the highest level when President Marcos meets ASEAN and Chinese counterparts during the summit?
Okay, during the joint working group meeting held at the Manila Peninsula last week on 22 to 24 August, they discussed a lot, but I think the most important one would be the discussion of the so-called milestones. No? Among these milestones are issues concerning the definition of the necessary terms for the COC. Of course, it's not over yet because it's a work in progress. The same is true with whether yung na-raise kanina ni, I think ni Alexis, no? The same is true with whether to make the COC legally binding or not. And then another one would be the relationship of the DOC to the COC, and then the geographic scope of the COC. Ano magiging purview nito, no? Geographical extent. But these things are very detailed and very wide in themselves. No? So even yung usapin sa apat na isyong ito will not be finished in 1, 2, or just 3 meetings. So, so far, yan yung naging progress. And during the same meeting, we also expressed definitely our displeasure over the recent developments in the South China Sea, especially yung water cannoning. And we stressed that all these actions should be avoided because they undermine trust. They escalate tensions in the South China Sea, and they undermine the stability and peace in the area. So, I guess I'll stop at that.
Thank you. And we have one more question from Celerina Monte again of NHK.
Sir, just to clarify your earlier statement, you said that we have already protested this new map that the China issued, correct? Tama
Yes,
po ba?
yes. In fact, I think just this morning, naglabas na yung OPCD, the Office of Press ng DFA, ng statement on that. So I would recommend that you look at that for more details.
Yeah, I already read
Sorry
that
to
statement.
interrupt.
But it was not mentioned when did the DFA file the protest.
Yeah, definitely earlier than today. Di ko din alam kasi we are not with that office. No?
Okay.
We're with ASEAN.
Tuesday New, DZBB.
Hi sir, balikan ko lang po yung
Oh, Tuesday.
dalawang laboratories kanyo na magpo-provide ng avian influenza vaccines. From what countries po itong dalawang laboratories?
These are from Indonesia.
And yung, ano sir, magdadala ba sila rito ng gawa na o dito sila magmamanufacture?
Well, actually, nasa development na sila ng vaccine, but primarily most of this will be done in Indonesia.
Okay, Heidi Sampang.
Sir, curious lang kami, gaano po kalaki yung delegation na kasama po ng Pangulo?
Okay, sa ngayon, I can only confirm free aside from the President. Kasi ang sa purview lang naman ng ASEAN National Secretariat, yung tinatawag nating the head of the three pillars of ASEAN among the Philippine cabinet members. So that's Secretary of Foreign Affairs Enrique Manalo, si Secretary Gatchalian of the SWD, who heads the socio-cultural pillar of ASEAN within the Philippines, and then si Alfredo Pascual of TTI, who heads also the economic pillar. Now, it's up to the President kung sino pang idadagdag niya. So, there'll be more, definitely.
Okay. Jean Mangaluz, Inquirer.net.
Good day, sir. Will Vice President Sara Duterte be designated as OIC while President Marcos is away?
Sorry, I don't know that. Yeah, I guess you have to direct that question to the Office of the President.
Did you raise your hand? Ivan
So
Myrina.
will there also be a business delegation coming with the President?
Oh yes, definitely. Kasi as I said a moment ago, there will be a meeting with the business sector, at least on two occasions. One is with the Business Advisory Council. So nandoon yung at least some of the members of the Philippine the Philippine members of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, and of course yung magiging partners nitong sinasabing mga foreign companies who are coming in or infusing more investment.
Yeah, and is there also a gathering with the Filipino community?
Oh, that one I cannot confirm yet. Yeah, wala sa program pa namin dito.
We will be announcing as we come close to the date. If there are no other questions, I think this ends our press briefing. Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary
thank you so much also,
Espiritu.
yeah.
Thank you, Malacañang Press Corps and the DFA Press Corps as well.